Dad tried to bury my mama because she gave water to a wounded man rancher, but she didn't die easy. Emma found her mother standing in the kitchen at dawn, water pooling at her bare feet. Sarah May's cotton dress clung to her body like a second skin. Mud streaked across her face and tangled in her dark hair. She had been missing for 3 days. Mama? Sarah May turned slowly, her eyes hollow but burning with something Emma had never seen before. Where's your father? Sleeping upstairs. Mama, where have you been? Dad said you went to visit Aunt Ruth in Millerville. But when I called yesterday, she said she hadn't seen you in months. Your daddy's a liar. Emma stared at the muddy water dripping from her mother's hair onto the clean kitchen floor. Her mother's hands were scraped raw, fingernails black with dirt. You're hurt. Not hurt. Angry. Clayton appeared in the doorway, wearing yesterday's clothes, a coffee cup trembling in his hand. The cup slipped from his fingers and shattered against the hardwood. You're supposed to be gone. Gone where, Clayton? You left. You packed a bag and left. You threw me down the old well behind the barn. Emma's breath caught in her throat. The well had been boarded up since she was small, her parents claiming it was dangerous. That's not what happened. Tell what really happened, Daddy. Clayton's face went white. He stepped backward toward the door, where his rifle hung on wooden pegs. Don't even think about it. Sarah May's voice carried new authority that made Clayton freeze. You tried to bury me because I gave water to a man. A dying man. That wasn't just any man, Sarah. You know that. He was bleeding out in our south pasture. He was James Cordova. Emma had heard whispers about the Cordova family in town. They owned the big ranch near the river, the one that had been causing problems for the mining company. So he's been stirring up trouble, fighting the expansion, making enemies of important people. Important people like who? Clayton wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. Like Sheriff Brennan. Like the governor's development team. Like people who put food on this table and keep us safe. Safe from what? From losing everything we got. Sarah May pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her dress pocket. It was waterlogged but still readable. Emma could see official letterhead with a government seal. Found this in your truck before you dragged me to that well. Seems your important friends have been paying you to make sure certain folks don't get help around here. Emma moved closer to read the letter. The words made her stomach drop. Daddy, this is you're being paid to report on anyone who helps the Cordova family. It says to use whatever means necessary to stop interference with the mining project. It's not what it looks like. It looks like you sold out your neighbors for money. I sold out nobody. I'm protecting this family. Sarah May laughed, but there was no humor in it. By throwing your wife down a well, you wouldn't listen. You never listen. So you decided to kill me? I didn't mean for it to go that far. I just wanted to scare you, make you understand how serious this is. Emma stared at her father like she was seeing a stranger. How did you get out, Mama? Sarah May's eyes never left Clayton's face. That well connects to the old mine shafts. I followed the water underground until I found another way out. Took me 3 days of crawling through tunnels in the dark. 3 days? 3 days to think about what kind of man I married. 3 days to decide what I'm going to do about it. Clayton moved toward his rifle again. Sarah, you need to understand the position we're in. These people don't play games. They want the Cordova land for the mining operation. They want it bad enough to remove anyone who gets in their way. Including your own wife? Including anyone. Emma backed toward the kitchen table, her heart pounding. What did they promise you, Daddy? Security. A future for you kids. What kids? It's just me left since Tommy died in Afghanistan. Don't bring your brother into this. Tommy died fighting for freedom, and you're here selling it to the highest bidder. Sarah May stepped closer to Clayton, leaving wet footprints on the floor. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to march yourself down to Sheriff Brennan's office and tell him you're done taking his money. You're going to tell him the Cordova family has every right to fight for their land. I can't do that. Then you're no husband of mine. Sarah, be reasonable. I've been reasonable for 20 years. I've kept your secrets and followed your rules and kept my mouth shut when I should have been speaking up. Emma watched her parents face each other across the kitchen like gunfighters in the old stories. Those days are over, Clayton. You tried to bury me, but I didn't die easy, and neither will the truth. Clayton's hand twitched toward his rifle. Sarah May stepped between him and the weapon, water still dripping from her torn dress onto the kitchen floor. Touch that gun and I'll scream loud enough to wake every neighbor within 5 miles. You don't understand what you're asking me to do. I understand perfectly. You made a deal with devils. Emma moved closer to her mother, her teenage courage building with each revelation. What other deals did you make, Daddy? Stay out of this, Emma. No, this is my family, too. My home, too. Sarah May reached for her daughter's hand. Her fingers were ice cold but steady. Tell her about the night meetings, Clayton. Tell her about the men who come to our barn after dark. Clayton's face crumpled. He looked older than his 50 years, beaten down by secrets he could no longer carry. They needed someone local, someone the Cordova family trusted. Trusted to do what? To watch, to report, to make sure they stayed isolated. Emma felt sick to her stomach. The Cordova Ranch was only 3 miles down the valley road. She had gone to school with her youngest daughter, Maria. You been spying on them? Not spying, just keeping track. For how long? Clayton sank into a kitchen chair, his head in his hands. 2 years. Ever since the mining company started making offers on their land. Sarah May pulled out another piece of paper, this one from her dress pocket. It was torn and muddy, but Emma could see handwriting in blue ink. Found this in the well, too. Looks like a list. Emma read over her mother's shoulder. Her blood went cold. These are names of people who helped the Cordova family. People who sold them supplies, gave them work, stood with them against a mining company. And next to each name is what happened to them. Sarah May's finger traced down the list. Joe Martinez lost his bank loan. Susan Wright lost her teaching job. The Hendricks family, their store burned down. Clayton looked up with hollow eyes. I didn't know they would go that far. You knew enough. Emma stared at her father, like she was seeing him for the first time. The Hendricks fire was an accident. No. And Joe Martinez losing his loan? Sheriff Brennan called in a favor at the bank. Jesus Christ, Daddy. Watch your mouth. Don't you dare tell me to watch my mouth. Not after what you've done. Sarah May sat down across from Clayton, her wet dress leaving stains on the wooden chair. Tell us about James Cordova. Tell us why giving him water was worth killing me over. Clayton's hands shook as he spoke. He wasn't supposed to be in our pasture. He was supposed to be at the county meeting, arguing with the development board. But he was here instead. Someone shot him, left him to die. Emma's voice came out as a whisper. Who shot him? I don't know. I swear I don't know. Sarah May leaned forward. But you knew he'd been shot. I got a call. Brennan told me to stay inside, keep away from the south pasture. And when I found James bleeding and gave him water, I panicked. I called Brennan. He said, I had to stop you from talking. Emma stood up so fast her chair fell backward. So you tried to murder Mama? I tried to scare her. I never meant for it to go so far. You threw her down a well, Daddy. Sarah May's voice was steady, but Emma could hear the rage underneath. How many other people have you helped them hurt, Clayton? None. I swear. How many other wives have lost their husbands? How many children have lost their parents? It's not like that. It's exactly like that. Emma walked to the kitchen window and looked out at their land. The morning sun was rising over the fields where she had played as a child. Everything looked the same but felt different now, poisoned by her father's choices. Is James Cordova dead? Clayton shook his head. No, he made it to the hospital. He's alive. And he knows what happened? He knows someone shot him. He knows someone tried to keep him from getting help. Sarah May stood up, her wet footprints marking a path across the floor. Then he knows the truth. Clayton's voice cracked. Sarah, if you go to the sheriff, if you tell people what really happened, they'll come for all of us. Let them come. They'll hurt Emma. Emma turned from the window, her young face set with determination. I'm not afraid of them. You should be. I'm more afraid of becoming like you. The words hit Clayton like a physical blow. He looked at his daughter, then at his wife, and saw that he had already lost them both. There's something else. Sarah May waited. The well. It's not the first time they've used it. Emma felt the floor shift beneath her feet. What do you mean? Other people who cause problems. Other people who wouldn't stay quiet. The kitchen fell silent, except for the steady drip of water from Sarah May's hair onto the floor. How many, Clayton? I don't know. I never asked. Sarah May looked at her husband with something beyond anger, beyond betrayal. She looked at him with pity. The well remembers, even if you choose to forget. The kitchen door slammed open. Sheriff Brennan stood in the doorway with two deputies, his hand resting on his gun belt. His eyes found Sarah May immediately, taking in her muddy dress and wet hair. Well, Clayton said you'd gone to visit family. Clayton says a lot of things that aren't true. Brennan stepped inside without invitation, his boots leaving marks on the clean floor. Heard there was some trouble out here. Thought I'd check in. Emma moved closer to her mother. Sarah May put a protective arm around her daughter's shoulders. No trouble, Sheriff. Just a family conversation. That's so. Brennan looked at Clayton, who hadn't moved from his chair. Clayton, you called me. Said your wife was making threats. I never called you. Clayton's voice was barely a whisper. Someone did. Sarah May pulled the government letter from her pocket, now dried but still readable. Maybe it was one of your other paid informants. Brennan's face hardened. He glanced at the letter in Sarah May's hand. I don't know what you think you found, ma'am, but sometimes people see things that aren't there. Like James Cordova bleeding in our pasture? James Cordova had an accident. These things happen. Emma stepped forward, surprising herself with her own courage. Accidents like the well behind our barn. Brennan's hand moved to his gun. I think there's been some confusion here. Sarah May laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. No confusion, just clarity. For the first time in years, I can see everything clearly. One of the deputies whispered something to Brennan. The sheriff nodded and took another step into the kitchen. Mrs. Clayton, I'm going to need you to come with me. Answer some questions about your whereabouts the past few days. I was in a well. Your well. That's quite an accusation. It's not an accusation. It's a fact. Clayton finally looked up from his hands. Sarah, please, think about Emma. Think about what this will do to her. I am thinking about Emma. I'm thinking about the kind of world I want to leave her. Emma's voice shook but held steady. I don't want to live in a world where giving water to a dying man gets you murdered. Brennan's patience was running thin. Nobody got murdered. You're all here, safe and sound. What about the others? Sarah May's question hung in the air like smoke. What others? The ones who didn't climb out of that well. Brennan's face went white. Behind him, his deputies exchanged glances. I think you've been through a trauma, ma'am. Sometimes it affects memory. My memory is fine. It's my conscience that was sleeping. Emma pulled away from her mother and walked to the kitchen table. She picked up a pen and paper. I'm writing down everything. Every name on Daddy's list. Every meeting in our barn. Every person who got hurt for helping the Cordovas. Emma, don't. Clayton stood up for the first time since the confrontation began. Why not, Daddy? Afraid of the truth. Afraid of what happens to you when the truth comes out. Sarah May move between her husband and daughter. The truth is already out. The question is what we do with it. Brennan stepped closer, his hand now openly on his gun. I think this conversation is over. No, Sheriff. It's just beginning. The voice came from the doorway. James Cordova stood there, leaning heavily on a walking stick, his arm in a sling. Behind him were 3 other men Emma recognized from town. James. Sarah May's voice carried relief and gratitude. Mrs. Clayton, heard you had some trouble recently. Brennan spun around, his deputies reaching for their weapons. This is private property. You're trespassing. Actually, it's not. James smiled despite his obvious pain. Seems the bank called in Clayton's loan this morning. Property's in foreclosure. Clayton's face went gray. That's impossible. Sheriff Brennan's friends work fast when they need to clean up messes. Emma stared at her father. They're throwing us out? They're erasing evidence. Sarah May's voice carried a new understanding. The house, the well, all of it. They want it gone. James nodded. But some evidence is harder to erase than others. One of the men with James held up a recording device. Been listening from outside. Got every word. Brennan drew his gun. I don't think so. Sarah May stepped forward, unafraid. Shoot me, Sheriff. Shoot me in front of all these witnesses. See how that works out for you. Sarah, no. Clayton finally moved, placing himself between his wife and the sheriff's gun. I won't let you hurt her. Little late for that, don't you think? Emma's voice cut through the tension. Daddy, you can still choose. You can still do the right thing. Clayton looked at his daughter, then at his wife, then at the sheriff who had corrupted him. For a moment, the kitchen was completely silent. Sheriff, put your gun away. Brennan stared at Clayton in disbelief. Have you lost your mind? I lost my mind 2 years ago when I started taking your money. Clayton walked to his rifle and lifted it from its pegs. But instead of pointing it at James or Sarah May, he pointed it at Brennan. My wife gave water to a dying man. That's what decent people do. Sarah May smiled for the first time in 3 days. Water always rises, Sheriff. Truth always surfaces. And women like me don't die easy. Outside, more cars were pulling into the driveway. Emma could see people from town, neighbors, other families who had been hurt by Brennan's schemes. The reckoning had come.